right, so I am very excited about this talk. It started back this past summer is actually the first time I was really thinking about doing this, and admittedly though this was a crazy busy week and didn't quite get as much done as I wanted to, so we'll kind of see. So I'll be a little bit more reading notes at times. It's kind of hard to follow Father Mike Schmitz. That's a pretty awesome thing to do. What a gift that was last week. But no, I think this will be a very good talk. I think it's obviously a topic that is clearly in our community of the University of Wisconsin and very applicable, and I think you'll see that. And so, yeah, weed and booze, is there a difference? We will see. Although, just to start off, again, I'll actually say, I don't think anyone's going to be that. You might be surprised what you hear, but your opinion may not change. I want to set really, really low expectations. Really low expectations. Under promise, over deliver. I don't think you're going to actually like this talk that much. It's going to be a little bit different than you expect. But actually, I'll just start out with the clear, obvious question. Is there a difference? Yes. One is a plant, and the other is a beverage. All right? Pretty simple, straightforward. All right. But let's dive in a little bit. Okay. All right, now guys, I actually literally need your attention, and I want to get serious for a second, okay? Get legitimately serious. Because we're going to go to a safe place, and this is now officially a judgment-free zone, okay? If you are bringing judgments in, you are free to leave. We are entering the safe space, all right? Everybody agree with that? Yeah, all right. Because it's interesting, because twice this happened this week. Two people came up to me. It started out, I'll call him out, James. James came up to me and said, Father Tim, my friends tell me that if you have never smoked pot, they're not going to listen to you at all. You have no credibility. Okay, wow, thanks, James, appreciate it. And then someone else said, well, are you going to talk about you and what you've done? And I was like, I really wasn't planning on it. And while I do fundamentally reject the premise that you have to have done something to have credibility, just think about this. You don't have to kill someone to know that murder is wrong. And that if you kill someone, you're not going to feel good about it, right? You don't actually need that. And so be careful, because we do think about that a lot, right? That sort of, that mindset comes in. I have to have that experience. People do this all the time with priests and marriage counseling, right? What do you know about marriage? Well, actually, priests see a lot more marriages than you guys do. You have your family experience and your own experience, which is good. But to have this broader base view is actually pretty cool. So, all right, that being said, we're going back into the safe space, the judgment-free zone, okay? Because I decided I am going to address this head on. Prior drug use. I'm going to address this, okay? Are we in the safe space? Okay. You promise? Promise? Yeah. All right, guys. Don't be scandalized. In the past, I have done drugs. All right. You promised me this is a judgment-free zone. No, I didn't. In the present. Kevin, you get out of here. All right, you ready? In the present, I still do drugs. I did drugs today. And in fact, this beloved institution known as St. Paul's often promotes drug use.
I had never heard of morning prayer, and then my buddy Greg Lyon, he was like, hey, come to morning prayer. And so I came, and I had no clue what I was doing, but the community here, in morning prayer and morning coffee, just left a lasting impression on me. Seeing everybody so joyful after the morning prayer, it's so great. It's just really comforting to be in this community and to see how joyful everyone is and how much they just thirst for God.
Support the mission. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Does not St. Paul's actively endorse drug use? We encourage it highly. Morning coffee. Caffeine is a drug. Let's name a few other drugs. Heroin, nice. All right. We're off to a good start. Yeah. Name another drug. Music. Okay. No, actually. Kesha, your love is my drug. Anybody? Anybody? So we're just going to start out with what's a drug, all right? You guys are going to hear this. This is why no one get that excited about this talk, because there's going to be a lot of definitions. Because if we're talking about something, we need to know what we're talking about. So what is a drug, right? Great question. A drug is anything that has some effect besides nutrition or hydration on the body or the mind when it is ingested. So yes, alcohol, coffee, tobacco, Tylenol, right? So we're clearly okay with some drug use, but look at that, I put it up there, heroin. Most people, I think, and in fact most students, would probably draw the line on campus, emphasis on most, on heroin, right? So we have to draw the line somewhere, somehow, right? So usually marijuana seems to be the place of debate and discussion. So largely, between weed and booze, you're going to hear a lot more about weed tonight. So I don't know if you're excited or not excited. The intro is perfect for that, actually. All right, but here's the interesting thing, is what unites drug use is feelings. Drugs make us feel good. Marijuana, alcohol, heroin, cocaine probably makes you feel good. Antidepressants, that's an interesting thing. Those are drugs. Those make you not feel bad. So what we're talking about tonight is, sorry guys, feelings. You thought you were coming to a talk on drugs, and we're actually talking about feelings. Right? Because I can take some stuff to make me feel good, but clearly there's a line where there's some stuff I wouldn't take to make me feel good. So we're going to talk about feelings. Where do I get all this stuff from? This is a book I highly recommend you read and encourage. I actually tried to get the speaker to come here tonight. He's a former seminary teacher of mine, husband, family man, one of the most impressive men I have ever met. He's written several books. A book he's written called Why God, Why Jesus, Why the Catholic Church? Goes through arguments for God's existence, then why do we believe in Jesus compared to other gods, and then why do we believe in the Catholic Church compared to other Christian denominations. Phenomenal book. This guy's amazing. He wrote his doctoral dissertation on the ethical use of antidepressants, which is obviously a very timely kind of thing. And this book kind of covers all three: how to feel good and how not to, the ethics of using marijuana, alcohol, and antidepressants and other mood-altering drugs. So just before I take this, almost everything tonight I'm stealing from him, but he stole it, if you will, from a few other pretty good sources, okay? And so I highly encourage you to read the book, because the book is all about the human person, too, to understand who the human person is and how our feelings interact. And then he used that as a springboard to talk about drugs, okay? All right, so here's the plan. For my portion here, what I'm thinking is, why is the talk important? That's the first thing. Be quick. I think you guys know this is actually a pretty important topic. How is anything at all ethical? What standard do we apply? This is a very important portion of the talk. Recreational weed and alcohol, and then at the end I'll kind of give a quick little thing what the church actually teaches or formally, officially teaches. That's why, sorry to break it to you, most of this talk is not about drugs. But you wouldn't have showed up if I said Feelings by Father Tim. Right? There's no way. All right, why important? 2 ideas. The legal question about marijuana is definitely growing. 21 states currently allow recreational marijuana. 10 years ago, 0 states allowed recreational, and that's growing. 81% of people in Dane County, just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, my dates are off, in the last election said marijuana should be legalized. So this is immensely popular in our city. And if we actually took a poll of college students, it might be higher than 81%, okay? Second reason why it's important, drug use on college campus is widespread and has a major impact on people's lives now. Some people say they smoke marijuana to reduce their anxiety. There are plenty of other studies that says it produces anxiety. And so I actually just want to look at the health thing just very briefly. This is just one sample from the CDC. People who use marijuana are far more likely to develop temporary psychosis, not knowing what's real, and long-lasting mental disorders, including schizophrenia, a type of mental illness where people might see or hear things that are not really there. And the association between marijuana and schizophrenia is stronger in people who start using marijuana at an earlier age and use marijuana more frequently. That kind of makes sense. But marijuana has also been linked to depression, social anxiety, and thoughts of suicide, suicide attempts, and suicide. That is not from an impartial source. That is from the CDC. Okay? And there's all sorts of arguments on the health benefits, positive or negative. Okay? I just give that to you because, actually, at the end of the day, the health benefits is not where I'm taking the argument at all. We're not going to really talk about the health elements, but I just want you to know that there are lots of interesting data out there, and I think we would all agree that people are smoking weed on campus, but there's also a lot of depression, social anxiety, and thoughts of suicide on campus. So maybe there's a link. Let's see. But actually, this is really what I want to go through first. How is anything ethical? So this is how are we going to describe if something is ethical or not. What we're not doing tonight is through divine revelation or biblical teaching. You're not going to hear me say the Bible says this, okay? Only at the very, very end will I say what the church teaches. And it's not the legal question either. The question of whether it should be legal is totally different and separate from the question of ethics or morality. It's not a public policy talk. It's just on the ethics. And this is not the only argument, right? So I'm just going to give you a couple things to think about. What I'm giving you is not definitive. Will probably create more questions, possibly even more doubts. But I want to kind of encourage a certain consistent way to think, feel, and approach this topic. So first I want to go through a couple of reasons why people do give in support of smoking marijuana and the sort of framework that they bring into it. Has anybody ever heard this one? Marijuana is safer than alcohol. Alcohol is legal. And therefore, weed is better for you than alcohol and should be encouraged. Anybody ever heard that? It's safer. When I was looking up funny memes, I was on Google this afternoon. Funny memes, booze, weed. I hope there's not like someone looking at my search history. This came up almost every single one. It was making fun of the idea that we should ban weed in any situation because alcohol is so much worse that it's not even a conversation. It's just given. Weed is way safer than alcohol. Way safer, not even a question. And we can joke about it now. Okay? That's kind of where people are at in this idea. What this does, the approach to this idea, the approach to this ethical idea that it's safer and therefore we should encourage it, is something called consequentialism. It's the idea that we can judge the morality by the consequences, by the outcomes. It's an idea that says the means justify the ends, because all we care about is the consequences. I'll give you an idea of why I don't believe in this, or kind of what I think the problem is. Well, the problem is who's counting the consequences, and how do we count those consequences? Because we will always debate what are the actual outcomes and what are the consequences. Okay? So to judge and argue something by the consequences is not a good place to go, because it just leads to continually arguing and endless. And really, what happens is someone just stops counting and says, ha, it's safer. I'll give you an example. This is as an Air Force officer and a pilot. And when I was in college, at the military academy, we were talking about World War II and the the dropping of the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I was vehemently in favor of that because I had gone to a class, vehemently in favor of that this was the ethical and right thing to do, because of the fact, and this is, I think, probably a largely undisputed fact, that the dropping of nuclear bombs in World War II saved lives. I meant to look at this ahead of time, and I didn't get a chance to, so forgive me. But the estimates of how many lives would be lost if the United States did a land invasion of Japan was unheard of. And so the idea is, well, we'll just drop a nuclear bomb, and that will save lives. We actually gave out Purple Hearts, which is what you give to someone wounded in war, I believe up until the early 2000s. And I may have to fact check this and look into it. I meant to, so forgive me if this is inaccurate, because it's more of an anecdote. But that they had actually created this many Purple Hearts during World War II, expecting to have that much loss. And we started giving out Purple Hearts for the last 50 years, tied back to the original planned invasion of Japan. And so I would say, back in college, I would say, yep, I'm okay with dropping nuclear bombs because it saves lives. The Catholic Church teaches that weapons of indiscriminate killing, weapons that can't distinguish between lawful combatant and innocent civilian, is always and everywhere wrong, even if it actually saves lives. And I think you could see that the proliferation of nuclear weapons doesn't necessarily make the world safer, right? So that's an idea of consequentialism. Another idea, as long as it doesn't harm anybody and I don't get addicted and it makes me happy, and I'm not doing anything wrong. It's fun and it helps me relax. Anybody heard that? As long as it doesn't hurt anybody, as long as I don't harm anybody, it's fun. Makes me happy. This is an idea, and this is actually, I think, the more dangerous idea. It's actually an application of consequentialism, but it's called utilitarianism. And guys, this is like in the air. You are drinking this in your classes. You are breathing it in your classes. Your teachers are teaching often and regularly with this idea in mind, especially in your ethical or philosophical classes. The number of students not at St. Paul's that I've talked to about moral issues, it always comes back to this, utilitarianism. So I want to look at that for a quick second. Utilitarianism teaches that the end of human conduct is happiness, and that consequently that the discriminating norm which distinguishes something into right and wrong is pleasure and pain. Pleasure and pain. This is from John Stuart Mill, one of the big proponents of utilitarianism. The creed which accepts as the foundation of morals utility, or the greatest happiness principle, holds that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. And this is key. I underlined it. Thus key. By happiness is intended pleasure. Happiness equals pleasure. By unhappiness, pain. So the goal in ethical decisions is to maximize pleasure, minimize pain, or minimize harm, it's often said. That's it. Seek pleasure, avoid pain, don't harm someone else, then do whatever you want. Anybody heard ideas like this? Had reasoning in your classes along line this? Yeah. This is huge. Okay. Ask the audience. So I'm going to pick on somebody, and I've done a similar exercise. So if you've done this before, if you're a freshman and sophomore, raise your hand. Okay. If you went on freshman retreat, lower your hand. So I would like a freshman who didn't go on. Javi, you did not go on the freshman getaway? Javi, excellent. Congratulations. Everybody give Javi a round of applause. Javi. No, safe space. Safe space. I can go back to Milton up there. Javi, did you go to class today? Why did you go to class today, Javi? Why did you want to take that quiz? Okay. You didn't want to, but you still went. Okay. Did you want to do well on that quiz? You did. Did you actually want to do well, or did you actually do well? Both. All right. So you wanted to do well in the quiz. Why did you want to do well in the quiz? Why do you want to pass the class? To get through school. Why do you want to get through school? Why do you want to get a degree? Why do you want to prove that you're capable of doing? No judge, safe space. Remember, you're good. Yeah. You never thought about that, have you? You want me to tell you why? No, I think you should keep going. Why shouldn't you drop out?
Because what if?
What if?
Yeah. What if I'm that whatever, I'm the last guy in my family to graduate.
Okay, why do you want to be the last guy in your family to graduate?
Next guy to get a degree.
Why do you want that next guy to get a degree?
Because there's always the next what if.
Okay. So what is it you're looking for? All right. Anyone else go to class today? Maggie's done this. Elizabeth, did you go to class today?
I did.
Why did you go to class today?
Because it was the last quiz of the semester.
Why did you want to be at the last quiz of the semester?
Because it's more for my grade.
Why did you want to get a good grade?
So my GPA.
Why do you want to get a good GPA?
So I can make myself happy.
What? That's a big jump. She said she wants to get a good grade to be happy. Interesting. So here's what I'm saying. Let's meet in the middle. Utilitarianism says seek happiness, right? Or seek the most pleasure. Let's go back, actually. Happiness is intended pleasure and absence of pain. Was it pleasurable to go to class today and take a quiz? Interesting. All right. We're going to meet in the middle of happiness. We can talk about happiness. Happiness is actually a great place to meet in the middle because I would argue, in fact, for Elizabeth and Javi, the reason you do anything, if you really draw it out, is because you think it's going to make you happy. It's the only motivator, in one sense, in your life for every single. Why did you come to this talk? You thought you were going to learn something that you could apply that would one day, that would help make me happy. Isn't that true? Why do you want to get a good grade? Because I want to get a good job. Why do you want to get a good job? Because I want to make lots of money. Why do you want to make lots of money? Because I think that's going to make me happy. So actually, as you're talking to your friends on campus, you can actually meet them in the middle in this happiness place. Okay? But here's the problem. Happiness does not equal pleasure, right? Because, well, one, that's just a simple example. Is it really that pleasurable to take a quiz? No, it's not. So the principle of seek happiness and avoid pain or avoid harm may be close, and that's why you always got to see where there's truth, where there's an area to talk, where there's an area to figure out, but it's not quite right. The first and most important principle as an approach to ethics and how I want you to think about this whole thing about weed and booze is to follow the first principle of what we call natural law, or ethics, which is do good, avoid evil. Do good, avoid evil. Think about it this way. The good is that which is to be done. Evil is that which is to be avoided. So the key question you should ask in every single decision you make is what good am I trying to seek, or what evil am I trying to avoid? Do good, avoid evil. That's kind of close, right? Seek good, avoid evil. Seek pleasure, avoid pain. Right? Is that kind of close? Do you see how that's actually close but ever so twisted? And I think it makes a huge difference. So the question is pleasure good? You can already read the slide. You're going to get a lot of these. There's a lot of writing on the slides. It's partly for me not being as prepared. Pleasure is good, but that which is pleasurable is not always good. Pleasure is a good, but not the highest good, or the guiding principle. Pleasure, you'll hear this at the end too, pleasure cannot be our guiding principle. It's not the highest good, okay? And I hope to show that there are times where pleasure is not, in fact, good. And I also hope to show at some point where pain is not necessarily bad. Okay, how do I know if something is good? If we're supposed to do good, avoid evil, we got to figure it out, how it is that we know that something is actually good, okay? And I'm going to give a silly example. Like a lot of people have already gotten this example. They know this from me. Anybody know what this is? No. I like it, Kevin. What is this, John? That's a chair. Is this a good chair? Is it a good chair? How do you know? What makes it good?
It looks good. It's comfortable.
Okay.
Goes with the room.
So this is a good chair.
I think so.
Is this a good chair?
It's not a chair.
It's not a chair. Why? What is it? It's a music stand. Is it a good music stand? How do you know? It looks durable. Okay. How about, this is kind of like a chair, right? Let's call it a stool, right? Is this a good stool? Why is it a good stool? Looks good. Looks good. What if we use these stools at all of the tables in here?
I don't know if that would work the best with like the tables, like the heights.
Oh, okay. What if we went to a bar, had a nice little bar table, you kind of high up, bar tables are kind of high, and then you had this chair here. Would that make a good chair? Would that be a good chair then?
Probably not.
What's that?
Would be like effective.
Mm-hmm. So the goodness of a thing is tied to its function, what it does. This is a good chair if it fulfills the function of what a chair is supposed to do. What's a chair supposed to do? Sit, comfort. Can it look nice? Does that make a difference? Yeah. So if you were making a chair for Newman Dinner, you'd probably choose this chair for the 5th floor of St. Paul's. And if you were making a bar stool for a nice bar, you'd probably choose something like this, right? Because it's nice higher. Now I don't have to go like this to drink my beer. So not only is there a nature and essence within the thing itself, there's also sort of a creative design behind the goodness of something, right? So I have to know both what something is and what it's used for me to call it good. So the goodness of something is tied to its function. Its function is tied to a creator who created it, and then the question is, created for what? A good chair might be that which performs its function well. A bar stool might be a good chair for a bar, but a bad chair for Newman Dinner. We have to know something's nature and essence and its purpose to assess the goodness of it. So the question is, what is the function, what is the purpose of a human being? Have you ever asked that question? If you've been in any of my formations, at some point I do ask that question of you, because this is a question 2,300 years old. Because if we want to know if something is good for me, I need to know my own essence and nature, and I need to know my function, my purpose in life. So how am I supposed to know what's good if I don't know who I am and what I'm made for? Does that make sense at least? That's why I do recommend this book, because it does a great job of explaining who the human person is and what the human person is made for. So at the end of the day, ethics is actually really cool because it's about the meaning of life. And actually, if we are talking about, I am pursuing something that is happy, I'm driven by what is happy, but I can only know something if it's good based on its function. And my guiding principle is not seek pleasure, avoid pain. My guiding principle is do good, avoid evil. It's quite convenient that goodness and happiness are not in contradiction. And that happiness is actually a byproduct of choosing what is actually good. I'll say that again. Happiness is a byproduct of choosing what is actually good. So if I choose what's good, it will lead to happiness. Now I got to take a quick second here. The happiness that we are talking about is not pleasure. Pleasure is not happiness. I'm talking about a long-lasting, enduring, well-being, human flourishing, fulfillment, which is pretty crazy. That you're made actually for happiness. And your happiness is tied concretely to your ability to choose good and avoid evil. The good that you choose will lead to happiness. The bad that you choose will lead to unhappiness. Yeah, that's the opposite of happiness. Do you believe that? Interesting. Well, let's go. Let's continue on. Let's talk about weed and booze, right? About darn time, Father Tim. Yep. So let's talk about weed and booze. Weed and booze. Okay, time out. Thing that I realized as it relates to many things in life is that the question is usually not the question. So, before we talk about marijuana in general, we're not talking about marijuana in general. What are we talking about? Recreational marijuana. Interesting. Sorry, we're not there yet. Hang with me. Because what do we have to figure out first? What is marijuana? What is recreation? If I need to know the thing that it's the thing, I need to know that the thing is, right? And I guess I'll give you this too. I have a feeling most people have an idea where I'm going to lead in terms of if I'm going to give the thumbs up or the thumbs down to smoke and dope, right? And it's a principle that I don't just tell people to stop. I need to give them a greater good to choose. Do we want people to recreate? Yeah. What is recreation? Let's see where I'm at here. Recreation is a break from working for physical self-support in order to turn to activities that stimulate and delight the soul or mind. Isn't that a nice definition? That's straight from the book. Recreation is that which can fill and delight the soul. Recreation is about delight and joy. And delight and joy are related to the concept of rest. Delight is an emotion. It's a feeling. Anybody not like feeling delight or joy? That's a lie. You would not be a human being. Emotions generally, and this is what's interesting. What's interesting about feelings and emotions? What do feelings and emotions do? They move us. Right? If I am, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the guys. If I see a cute girl and I'm attracted to her, well, maybe that's not the best example. Huh? Emotions stimulate us to move, right? Yet that's not the case with the emotion of delight, of joy. What does the emotion, the passion of delight and joy make us want to do? Rest. It makes us want to rest. So the delight actually only motivates by its absence. When there's no delight or joy, then we'll do almost anything to get it back, and we'll actually move. And then when we find delight and joy, the only demand that delight and joy makes on us is that we rest. Recreation is an amazing thing. Recreation. To rest. To sit. To be able to be refreshed. This is essential in your life. If I put on the Catholic hat for a second and do go to divine revelation, last I checked, there's actually a commandment to rest. God commands you to recreate, to rest. Why? Because he's a tyrant and he wants you to be unhappy? Or maybe recreation is actually tied to your happiness. Intimately tied to your happiness, because maybe recreation is actually really good. Okay. So before I give you the hint on my ultimate, I want to give you something that you can do. So the question is, where do I find recreation? I'm going to point out 3 areas. I already gave you one here. Recreation in rest. But we have to make a distinction because not everything that you might think is rest. So rest is a detachment from doing and an emphasis on being. Rest in just being itself can be described as a celebration of reality. If I just rest in being, I'm like, yeah, reality's pretty good. I'm comfortable with where I'm at. To see that all that exists, that's being itself, to see that it's good and rest in it. I'm going to put on my biblical hat again. I guess I will bring in more biblical stuff than I wanted to, but What does God do when he finally creates the world? I see that it is good, and then I rest in it. What are two ways we don't ever find recreation or rest? Workaholism and idolism or boredom. Workaholism, if all you do or all you value is doing or producing. Anybody see that in our society? That my value comes from what I do or what I produce. I have to be doing something. Safe stage judgment zone. Actually, I won't make you raise hands. This probably applies to a lot of us. We find our value in what we do, what we produce. And therefore, it makes it really hard to actually rest. If you're the type of person who can't rest, there's a deficiency in your life. And you won't be fully happy until you figure out how to rest. Idleness and boredom. Doing nothing is not necessarily restful either. And you guys experience this. Sitting on the couch, cruising Netflix, or scrolling on your phone is not real rest. It's a restless attempt to escape reality. Right? Everybody experience that? I got all this free time. I'm going to finally rest. 3 hours pass, and you feel more tired, more disappointed. Is that recreation? Do you feel recreated after you sit and scroll Instagram and watch TikToks for 4 hours? No. So that's not rest. What's an example? Nature. Anybody gone for a walk and been like, wow, that was really nice? It's a celebration of being. So rest is a celebration of being, spending time in nature. There's my example. Second place of rest, contemplation. This one might be a little bit controversial as you guys are students. Another word for contemplation is study. What? Yes. Classically, recreation is study or contemplation. Think about this. We do take pleasure in the experience of truth. Why are you at this talk? You expect to get a certain happiness and pleasure out of the information you receive. Make that distinction between school, because school is hard work. Taking a test is not recreation, I get that. But to contemplate the truth is a source of delight. Actually, according to the same guy about 2,300 years ago, it actually says that's the greatest human delight. Contemplation of the divine. Contemplation in truth is one of the greatest human forms of rest and recreation. So it's why it's okay to leave a stop to attend a talk. That's why you actually want to go to talks. Think about it. Why do I want to go to this? Dude, don't people talk to me all day in class? And then literally I'm going to go listen to another dude talk at me? That's crazy. Maybe my mind actually needs rest because my schoolwork isn't giving me it because it's actually work. It's hard. This is also why people had studies, as I mentioned, I put up there. It was a place of leisure in your house to have a study. That at the end of a long, hard day, what would you do? Study. Because it recreates you. What did I give? Contemplative delight. Pursuit of truth is actually recreative. All right, what's next? Recreation in and with others, what we call community. Spending time with friends is genuine recreation. The soul delights in friendship and love. In fact, I would argue this is probably the most restful, recreative thing. Love. So truly nothing else on earth can really compare with this. Think about when you bring happiness to another, seeing the excitement of kids, doing something for someone you care about, it's real delight. When you go with the bros to go skiing for a weekend, that's awesome. When you go fishing, hunting, when the ladies get a little getaway, I don't know what the ladies do when you get away. You go to the spa, I don't know. This was just for you guys. St. Paul's Koinonia retreat. Communion. Koinonia means community or communion. There's actually rest. So when you go on retreats, and at St. Paul's you often go on retreats, if you go to winter retreat, a lot of people stay up late and they're super tired, and yet they come back, what? Alive. On fire. What the heck? Doesn't even make sense. Because you actually see that recreation or true rest is not just a physical thing. It's not in the body. It's in the soul. All right. So these are 3 areas of recreation. There are more, but these are 3 key areas. Rest in being, or recreation in being, recreation in truth, recreation in goodness. Recreation is about being, truth, and goodness. The other one that I would add is beauty, to rest in beauty, but I'm going to skip that for tonight. So if a recreational aid entails an achievement of these goods, it seems like we should encourage it. All right, we're going to actually get to weed and booze now. All right, ready? Yeah! Can smoking marijuana assist us in celebrating being, truth, and goodness? Is it a good that can contribute to our overall happiness? Maybe. Delight and recreation of weed. Don't people smoke weed to relax? Don't they often talk about deep insights? Bro. And yet it happens, sure, where people are addicted, right? As long as I'm not harming anybody, I'm not getting addicted, it's okay. And it brings everybody together. Community. Join the company of all. Weed has all the right feels. Right? It has all the right feels for the wrong reasons. This is where the rubber hits the road a little bit more. Again, this is explained much more thoroughly and in depth in the book. I don't want to bore you guys with a 2-hour lecture. The essence of a delight is a response to a union with what? To pleasure? No. The essence of delight is a response to a union with good, something that prompts the person to rest in what's actually good. Okay? So recreational drug use is an attempt to achieve an enjoyable brain state which prompts the person to rest in that brain state. It's an experience of delight detached from the experience of an actual good. It is not the proper functioning of the mind to perceive a true good and to feel delight as a result. It is a delight separated from reality. It is a chemical mood altering, actually, and technically for weed it's classified as a hallucinogen, that is detached from actual reality, actual contemplation, or genuine love. The key takeaways, it's a deceptive delight. All the right feels for all the wrong reasons, which is why you feel hollow afterwards. All the right feels, all the wrong reasons. Why it doesn't actually recreate you. Because it's not recreative. Here's an example of another deceptive delight. We're going to get real hard. Yeah, you didn't know. Weed, booze, and sex. Yeah. Masturbation is a deceptive delight in contrast to genuine sexual delight. Is sex good? Yes, it is. Is sexual pleasure good? No. Unfortunately, there are people that call themselves Christians that believe that. That's wrong. It's a denial of the incarnation. Sex is beautiful, good. Sexual delight, though, is a response to the objective goodness of the union of persons with one spouse. So the union of body and soul of spouses in marriage coming together in the sexual act is a good. And it produces what? Pleasure. It does produce children. Good answer. Definitely produces children. In case you're wondering the function of a thing, how it works, yeah, this is how you get kids. Masturbation, on the other hand, is a manipulation of the body to get the feeling of sexual delight without any actual connection to another person. Marijuana, as does masturbation, provides all the right feels for all the wrong reasons. Good feelings of delight for the wrong reasons. Marijuana, it's a response to a deliberately induced brain state, an altering of chemicals, you could say, to produce a desired effect, which is why masturbation also leaves you hollow. I just need to rest, relax. No, and then you hate yourself. You have shame. Do you think God created sex so that when you embrace in it, you feel bad and dirty about yourself? Or perhaps he actually wanted you to experience intense pleasure because God is a God of life, and the thing that produces and ensures that life continues is also just happens to be one of the, if not the most pleasurable experience. that we have on earth. So again, common ground with the utilitarian. I'm okay with pleasure. We like pleasure. But pleasure has to be attached to a good. Do good, avoid evil. Not do pleasure, don't do pain, right? Okay, let's go back. This is a great quote. So we'll put on the church hat for a second. This is from a document. In a way, drugs have become an indicator of a society which, instead of proposing the values of life, encourages escape into a pleasant and deceptive state of euphoria, attainable through the use of drugs. As we've repeated several times, the drug addict makes use of products or drugs with the purpose of attaining deceptive pleasure and happiness, above all in order to reassure him or herself. Deceptive delight leaves you hollow. It doesn't actually provide recreation, rest, or make you happy. So let's just take a quick look at those sort of ideas. Real recreation, rest, contemplation, community, versus recreational marijuana. I defined it as, I changed his terms a little bit. Mellow idleness, feeling insightful, bro, and false benevolence. So, weed doesn't actually lead to real rest. It just leads to this almost inaction, which doesn't actually allow you to embrace reality as such. Think about this. What if there's a guy that said he needed 5 beers in order to find a certain woman attractive? Yeah, I think I really like her. 5 beers in. It's pretty obvious that guy doesn't actually really think the woman was attractive. His bogus attraction is due to chemical manipulation as opposed to an actual perception of her objectively attractive qualities. And so by the same token, what do we think of someone who smokes weed in order to appreciate reality? In that case, we'd be justified in concluding that person doesn't actually think reality is all that great. Otherwise, he would just have recourse to a drug, or otherwise he wouldn't have recourse to a drug in order to feel good about existence, whether in his own or in the world. And so smoking weed isn't recreation, it isn't leisure. It's a substitute, and it's what someone does instead of actually opening himself up to the world. This is a great line. The propensity of marijuana user for inactivity, then, doesn't derive from rest, because it isn't the fruit of a recognition of the goodness of things. Weed can sedate, but it can't bring peace. Weed can sedate, but it can't bring actual peace. Contemplation versus feeling insightful. People have deep conversations when they're high. They marvel at all sorts of things in the world and have these core insights into themselves. But again, that's not from reality. That's from stimulating the brain, and it's actually not real contemplation. In fact, cannabis actually impairs basic mental functions such as memory and problem solving. It doesn't enhance them. There is a quote, I didn't do this it's from the book, it's pretty good. It's like, the idea that we all get really smart when we start drinking or smoking actually is proof that you're quite stupid. Because you wouldn't say those things if you didn't induce yourself to do that, right? So it's actually not, you feel insightful, but you're not. You start talking about things you don't actually care about. Community versus false benevolence. Meaningful social interaction requires more than just shared space. It requires shared experience. And the only platform that can enable shared experience is the real world. Reality alone can unite 2 minds because reality is how each mind gets out of itself. We only get out of our mind by actually approaching reality. Why can we both look at the same tree at the same time? Because the tree is in the real world. And why can we not both dream the same dream at the same time? Because the dream is just in our head. So, the more we stimulate mental experiences independently of the external world, the less capable we are of actually engaging with those around us. I stimulate my brain chemically, He stimulates his brain chemically. We don't have a shared experience. We're both stuck in our mind, actually not in communion, in community. Drugs may make you feel good about yourself or benevolent, like I have this, I like that guy, right? The weed guy's the nice guy, loves everybody, right? Make you feel that way, but it doesn't actually give you good habits of serving your neighbor or actually loving the other. Love is the will, the good of the other. Especially doing that self-sacrificially. Because the enjoyments, it actually does quite the opposite. Because these drugs simulate the enjoyment of social interaction independently of any charitable activity, they lead you to an evaluation of your relationship based on the satisfaction they give you. It literally flips community on its head. There's no such thing as the virtuous, sacrificial weed dude. You become more selfish. And then you actually have to force people into your realm of selfishness to appreciate, instead of actually serving another. Or me actually going out to serve the other is actually just so that I have someone else and I'm not alone doing this. It is the opposite of love. So if you're using drugs to make you care about other people, it's a pretty good indication that you don't really care about other people. Right? So we see deceptive delight, mellow idleness, feeling insightful, false benevolence. All right, we're going to talk about booze now. We're not going to talk that much about booze, so don't worry. Everything said above could apply to booze. Boom, hard stop. You can seek deceptive delight, pleasure with what we call drunkenness. Not getting high, drunkenness. And now that drunkenness could give us rest, contemplation, and community. And unfortunately, that's the vast majority of college student drinking. It's disordered. That I do this because I need to relax. It's the weekend. I got to hang with the guys. Sorry, ladies, I just don't have quite the repertoire of girls' stories. And contemplation. Yeah, let's pound a case and let's talk about the affairs of the world. So in one sense, alcohol can be the exact same. It can be a drug that actually doesn't lead to real recreation. But obviously, we host events at St. Paul's that have beer. Uh-oh. And it's not just the same of coffee, so alcohol is okay in some senses, right? Ah, my favorite virtue, temperance. So I'll be pretty quick on this, but because this could be a whole talk. And most people, when they do talk about weed and booze, this is right where they go to, temperance. That's why I wanted to go to that's why I think this book, How to Feel Good and How Not to, is so good, because it just pushes aside, it actually doesn't even mention temperance. I'm bringing in temperance because I think it is important, because it's all about recreation, right? But temperance is the proper moderation of alcohol that gives us the ability to actually connect us to reality. So there's a possibility that the use of alcohol might actually connect us to a reality and the goods that pertain to it. And so that key question, does alcohol or a drug connect us more to reality or away from reality? That's a good key indicator. And what am I doing? Is it actually take me closer into reality, real life, or does it take me away? Am I diving into reality or am I escaping? So a shy, rigid personality loosening up actually can get someone into reality. Concerns of pride and vanity. Anybody concerned about pride? How I view people? Do you realize that's a sin? Vanity and pride? But if I have a beer and I'm less concerned about pride and vanity, do you see how alcohol actually promotes virtue? What? Isn't that crazy? Because it takes a defect away and puts me more in tune with reality, that I shouldn't be prideful or vain. Or if someone is super shy that they can't talk to anybody, that is a personality defect. Is booze going to fix that? No. But could help for a brief moment, done temperately, right? Because I'm trying to connect that person to reality as such. so that that person could connect with the community, and actually really rest and see, wow, it was fun to be with the guys. So actually sitting in a circle with the bros, having a beer or two, is a great thing. Can be. Big key before you take away what I had a quotable line in there at some point. Temperance forms what it means to be a good person. That's a whole other talk. It aligns with the good of the human nature. Temperate alcohol might be genuinely good. It might make them appreciate, all that good stuff. It is clear, though, that the moment you depart from temperance, the moment you exceed, either via drunkenness or getting high, one is escaping from reality and not entering into it. Am I drinking to embrace reality, or am I drinking to escape reality? It's a great question. Don't drink to escape reality. That's how you lead to addiction. So here's another one. We got about 5-ish minutes left. We'll close up here pretty quick. This is a fascinating chapter in this book because he actually points out as well that booze itself isn't even always a drug, too. And I think that's actually a great thing. Is there a difference between booze and weed? Yeah, there's a lot of difference. So temperance is one of them, and that's usually gone there. But actually that it's not even always a drug. Because alcohol can be a good in and of itself, because it's not just desired for its intended brain state. Examples are, historically it was safer than certain beverages in the past, and it provides actual nutrients and hydrants sometimes. It's a beverage that can actually give you nutrients, possibly. Careful, don't take that one to the bank. It is enjoyed for its taste. A cold beer on a hot summer day genuinely refreshes. You're like, that's good. Craft beer, wow, the hops, that's flavorful. The effects are felt immediately for taste and don't need time to ruminate like the effects of weed do. Even if you don't feel the buzz of a beer or a glass of scotch, you know it's good. So the thought experiment, I like this. Someone sold you marijuana. You smoked a joint, nothing happens. 2 joints, nothing happens. 3 joints, you wait 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and you feel nothing. What's your response? That dude sold me fake weed. Am I wrong? This weed's broken. It's not weed. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. People smoke weed to get high. That is what they do it. If you come over to the rectory and you have a great conversation, I give you a can of beer, I give you a nice glass of scotch, you don't care. It doesn't even cross your mind. Am I buzzed? Have I reached a buzz level? You don't even think about it. You take a sip. It's good scotch. Aged nicely. Peaty, smoky. Right? Don't you see the difference, though? That thought experiment, especially on the weed side, I think is actually really good. You would think the weed is deceptive or defective. Okay, this is my warning, though. Yes, booze is usually consumed as a drug. And I just really want you to be aware of that because it is a good, but it can, when it's used temperately, but it's also very dangerous and leads to serious addiction with major effects. A helpful principle to understanding is that pleasure of any type, food, drink, sex, that is sought for its own sake quickly becomes disordered. My own rule of thumb for temperance is never to be more excited about the food or the drink than the company I'm with. Don't let the desire for a good drink, good as it is, get in the way of the person with an eternal soul in front of you that is far more important. So when we're going to vintage after AO, don't be more excited for the beer or the mixed drink than you are for the company. It's a great principle. It's hard. It's very hard. I really like food, and I like a good beer. But the other good of community is actually what you're seeking. And sometimes the booze can help. But guys, how often do you see this actually demonstrated well? Temperate drinking. For a while in my life, I actually really said there's just no way it's not possible to drink temperately. We should just cut it out. And that's okay. If that's where you are in your life, you just I need to stop drinking altogether, I would much rather you do that. Virtue's in the middle. So if you tend towards excess, you need to cut it out. And then maybe you'll find your way back in the middle. That's actually kind of in my life. I was like, I saw how much booze was just destroying people's lives in the military. So I went to seminary. I'm like, I'm going to start all new. And there's no way that this can actually be a good. And then you know what happened? I got sent to Italy, where they have really good wine. And you know what really good wine goes really well with? A nice long dinner, 2-3 hours long, where you what? Engage in conversation, community. Totally transformed my idea of alcohol as a good, but done temperately. And you guys know that it is not done temperately on campus, all right? This is why Father Eric is okay with, I don't say promoting drinking. He wants to promote the ends, the good. He doesn't want you to get caught up in legalistic laws or rules because it's so much deeper than just rules. It's about ends. It's about choosing what is actually good. And then when you do that, you actually appreciate reality all the more, and you can actually engage in recreation. Okay, very, very quick right at the end. What does the Catechism of the Catholic Church say? Big shocker. The use of drugs inflicts very grave damage on human health and life. Their use, except on strictly therapeutical, you can read that as medical, grounds, is a grave offense. Grave offense means you commit this, you should go to confession before you receive the Eucharist. Okay? The Church recognizes that this hurts you because it doesn't actually lead towards happiness. It's deceptive pleasure that will destroy your life if you continue in it. That's pretty serious, right? But, yeah. So a little weed never hurt anybody. Yeah, it destroys your relationship with God. That's pretty bad. Pope Francis has a great quote. Substitute drugs are not an adequate therapy, but rather a veiled means of surrendering. No to every type of drug use. It is as simple as that. But to say to this no, one has to say yes. Yes to life, yes to love, yes to others. Guys, Christianity is not a religion of the holy no. The idea that you can't do stuff. Christianity is about the yes to the deepest, lasting, most powerful, most pleasurable, most beautiful, most good and true experiences in the world. It is a yes, not a no. I really believe that in my heart of hearts. We are a religion of intense joy, pleasure, and delight on what is true, good, and beautiful. It's a religion of yes in this world and the next. Do you actually believe that? I do. I really do. We are not a religion of the holy no. The last two things I'll say is basically to use marijuana for recreation, the analogy I'm going to use, is like using a dinner plate to hammer a nail into a wall. Right? I got a nail. I could use a hammer. Might be the best idea. Is that a good hammer? Yeah, if it pounds the nail into the wall. Was a dinner plate made to knock a nail into a wall? Would it work? Would that nail go into the wall? Yeah, it actually would. What would happen to the plate? Damage. You destroy the plate, but you get the nail in the wall. Right? All the right feels, all the wrong reasons. That's what trying to use marijuana or any drug, even alcohol, especially alcohol, in the sense of drunkenness for recreation. I'm going to go out and get drunk to relax. You're hammering a nail in the wall with a dinner plate and you're going to destroy yourself. Alcohol is a good. It was made to enjoy, to bring people into greater community. So here's your choice. Here's what I kind of end with. Your choice. You can eat from the dumpster or from the altar of the king. Right? I can choose. It's your choice. Totally your choice. You can go out and indulge in all of the pleasures you want. Your choice. Go. Eat in the dumpster. But that's what you're doing. You're eating in the dumpster. I know Greg got really excited. I had to go so far. There were some pictures that had guys in the dumpster, but then I knew it would get Greg a little too excited. Greg, it's your choice. You know what I love about Greg? Greg eats out of the dumpster and the table. He's gonna get proud on this. Greg does a great job of having fun, of real recreation, community, truth, being. He sees the world in a great way, really does. Truly compliment, right? Yeah, he eats out of a dumpster. That's kind of weird. There's some memes, it's like people go to confession and they say, the priest is like, yeah, again, not a sin, but that's weird. But this is your choice, guys. The pleasures of the world is eating out of the dumpster. The table, the banquet of the king. Imagine a reality where I don't want to eat out of the dumpster. The even thought of getting high or getting drunk is not something that even crosses my mind. Why? Because I've eaten from the table of the king. I have experienced true passion, true delight, and yes, even true pleasure. It's possible. Imagine this reality. It's possible. To not even consider the dumpster and go straight to the banquet. All right. Weed and booze. Is there a difference? Yes, there is. All right. I will take, let's close in prayer. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Against better judgment, I'll answer one question. So why don't you just have a cigar with your friends? Yeah, why don't you just have a beer? That's a great question. It usually comes up. That's why I avoided the temperance kind of thing, okay? I would not. Marijuana is not an intrinsic evil, right? And even smoking marijuana is not an intrinsic evil, right? What I mean by intrinsic evil is that it's always wrong in every circumstance, right? Why can I say that? Is because it could be used as a medical, therapeutical thing, possibly, okay? We're avoiding that whole thing because there's a whole lot that we'd have to go through. Usually, these questions come up and they're very precise about that. Well, what if in this really specific situation, I could use weed temperately, where I'm using it just for the community, just to spend time. What I would argue is, one, you're not even using weed, right? It ceases to be what it is. And then my other question is why do you need weed? This is what I've yet to have someone give me a good answer for this. Of tell me why I need marijuana to experience these. Because why couldn't you have a beer or a cigar? Something that doesn't actually induce a high, a brain-altering substance. So that's why, again, okay, might you have a puff of a joint? Would that be a mortal sin? Possibly not. But why are you doing that? You're flirting with grave matter. What are you seeking? We're not about rules rigid. We're about doing good. What is the good that I am choosing? What is the evil that I am avoiding? Does that make sense? It probably doesn't answer your... I just don't think you can justify to me why you would want to. I really don't. But I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with you about it. Yep. Cool. AO band. Awkward transition. All right. Thanks, guys.